Okay, we're back. Lesson 14 deals primarily with the second aorist. Okay, and fortunately for us, this is really nothing new. We've been seeing this for weeks now, that these particular kinds of verbs have this funny third principal part that instead of the normal elusa form that you get that might look something like this, okay, where you have the epsilon, sigma, alpha pattern, you get something like this. Okay. Uh, ugh. Okay, you get heron, which is the third principal part of herisco. Okay, no epsilon. Okay, no sigma and no alpha. Okay, you instead get this on ending here. All right, and again, nothing particularly surprising about that. We've seen these all along. It's just that the most common verbs have these second aorists. Okay, there's far fewer verbs that have the second aorist, the so-called second aorist, but they tend to be more common, and so therefore they're worth devoting a little bit of time to learning. Okay, pipto, the verb for fall, has a second aorist. I should have written it here. It's epion. Okay, like this. Okay, sorry, it's not epion. It's epison. Okay, PMI, to drink. Okay, its second aorist is epison. Okay, let's put a slash there. Okay, erchomai, to come. Okay, its second aorist is the very common elthon. Okay, adon is the second aorist of horao, which is the verb to see in the present. Okay, so again, you'll see all of these. Herisco, we just saw that one. It's heron. Okay, Lego. Okay, very common one. Apon. Okay, is the third principal part of that. Fugo. I'm not going to write it. It's ephagon. Okay, escon for have is the principal part, the third principal part of echo, which is a verb, our old friend that goes way back to the beginning. Okay, so again, take these in mind here. Lambano has elabon. Okay, so these are all very, very common verbs. Okay, so what to do with these? Well, again, it doesn't pose any great problem to conjugate them if you just remember the pattern. And actually, the pattern is somewhat vaguely reminiscent of the imperfect pattern that we saw for even a regular verb like luo, eluon, elun, elus, elun, eluamen, eluate, eluon. Okay, so it's very similar to that. We see the augment. Okay, there's some kind of an augment here, depending on what kind of a verb it is. If it begins with a vowel, it'll be an elongated, usually an eta, okay, or sometimes an omega, or some other kind of long vowel. Okay, and then instead of the sigma alpha pattern, you get this on pattern here, the secondary pattern here that's sort of similar to what we saw in the imperfect. Okay, elthon, elthase, elthen, elthamen, elthate, elthon. Okay, again, for a second aorist, the third person plural is identical to the first person singular. Okay, the way a Greek says I came is exactly the same as saying they came. Okay, so how do you know the difference? You don't, except for context. Okay, and usually there it's clear. Okay, or of course if there's a pronoun or something like that expressed, or the actual subject is expressed, then you would know. Okay, same thing. Okay, very common word, apon. You see practically every sentence in the New Testament, in the Gospels especially, because Jesus is doing a lot of talking and other people are too. Apon, epes, apen, apomen, apete, apon. Okay, same deal. Okay, elabon, the word for take or receive in the aorist. Okay, elabon, elabes, elaben, elabomen, elabete, elabon. Okay, so I took, you took, he took, we took, you took, they took. Okay, so again, be on the lookout for these. They're very common. Now, here's the thing that tends to happen with this. The New Testament writers are writing Greek for the most part as a second language. And one of the things that happens when immigrants come in and begin to speak a language, and we've seen this with English, is what they'll tend to do is kind of standardize things a little bit. Okay, so for an English speaker who knows that a particular pattern is to be observed, for instance, the word mouse. What's the plural of mouse? Well, if you're an immigrant, you might not know that it's mice. Okay, you would think on the analogy of house, where you talk about two houses, why not talk about two mouses? You just don't talk that way in English, right? In proper English, but for an immigrant, by analogy, you would tend to do that. Okay, and I would suspect that in several centuries later, if enough people continue to speak English as a second language, you're going to see a lot of these irregularities tend to die out because they don't make a lot of sense to non-native speakers. Well, one of the things that begins to happen is the far more common first aorist ending, sometimes you'll see stuck on second aorist verbs. Okay, an example of this is elebon. Elebon is the classically correct aorist form, second aorist form for lambano. Now, but sometimes though you'll see, often in the Old Testament, and sometimes even in the New Testament, you'll see elaboson. What's elaboson? Why would you have the oson ending? Well, remember, that's because the regular first aorist would sort of end that way, right? So basically what you're doing is kind of forcing this verb to fit the first aorist paradigm, okay, even though it is strictly a second aorist verb. Okay, oftentimes you'll see instead of adon, which would be the correct form for I saw, you might see eidoson, okay, which is instead what? That's also means or that they saw. Okay, it's just kind of the more vulgar form you might say. Okay, but you do see this in the New Testament. Okay, it's a fairly common phenomenon. Okay, one of the things you might see is even something like this instead of apon. Okay, which would normally mean what? It could mean I said or they said. You might see apon. Why the alpha here? Just because non-native speakers are just used to having the on ending there for a third person plural aorist verb. Okay, and so it's almost by habit that you'll stick the an ending there, and you'll see a lot of New Testament texts as well as Old Testament texts that do this. Okay, just be on the lookout for this. Okay, basically the moral of the story is that the rules are kind of messy for how for the forms you actually see in the Bible as opposed to what is sort of demanded by strict speaking classically correct Greek. Okay, it's one of the hallmarks of Koine. Okay, so again, keep that in mind. Okay, here are some more principal parts. Have fun with these. These are all fairly common verbs, all fairly important, worth learning. Have a look at these. I wanted to show you one other thing I think I may have neglected to point out. You know what? Never mind. I think I'll show it to you later. But it's basically showing the kata is kind of an intensifier. Maybe I'll just show it here briefly. Okay. You have the verb luo, which we know means to loose or to free, but kata luo means to destroy. Okay. You have the verb esthio. I'm not accenting these. Esthio means to eat, but katesthio means what? To gobble up or devour. Okay, it kind of intensifies. It. Krino is a good example. Krino, as we know or should know, means to judge, but katakrino means to condemn. Okay, so kata sometimes has that harshness attached to it. Be on the lookout for that. Now, but of course, the normal, probably more common meaning of kata when you attach it to a verb is what? Down. Okay, so for instance, anabino means what? To go up. Okay, bino by itself just means to go or to move, but katabino means to go down. Okay, so That's the normal use of kata. But again, kata can sometimes just intensify the action. Okay, so bear that in mind. All right, that's just a little quirk that's going to help you digest more and more of these verbs that we'll run across. Okay, well, with that, we will stop and see you in the homework. Okay, bye.